Hey, happy Friday, everybody. And you know what? It's Friday the 13th, and I'm in a different location. I am Sadia Davis, the director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and I am so grateful to have three incredible individuals that can guide you as mentors into your creative success, right? As a business, the creative economy is something that people are always trying to figure out, well, how did you get started? Or what led you to that? Or how did you get to where you are? And so today we are spotlighting Mind Your Business, Mind Your Mentor. Also, for those of you who've checked in with us recently, I usually shoot from my home, right? And today I'm at 2112. And what you're looking at are actually not just keys from a piano, but they are acoustic paneling in our main stage. So I'm coming to you live from 2112. And at this point, I want to share with you some of the offerings that we have for this week coming up. So for those of you who know, Martin Atkins is a genius. He's a drummer, and he's just a phenomenal rock star human being. He happens to be a CCE advisor, and tomorrow he's doing some scratch and sniff virtually. So Saturday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. This is a long conference for music and entertainment, but it's exciting. It's the third Midwest Music Expo, a music business conference started by Martin Atkins and his students at Milken University in 2019. As an in-person event, and that had to pivot, like so many of us, to this virtual space, this will be the first scratch and sniff conference with a hand-scented, screen signed and numbered smell card so you can smell along with the informative panelists throughout the day. So they're featuring Michael Anthony Algo, who signed Metallica at the age of 23, and Wendy Day, the queen of hip hop, just to name a few of the two amazing presenters. This event is in conjunction with the Indie Week in Toronto and us, the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. We are so excited to be able to continue to bring these dynamic, organic opportunities for learning, education, and entertainment. So you can check out midwestmusicexpo.com for more information, but I highly recommend sign up. It's free. What do you got to lose? It's a Saturday. Go for it. Also, we are taking submissions now for our Creative Cypher pitch event, which is happening in, I believe it's in December or January. Anyways, check our website for all of those details. You can apply today at creativecypher.org. Now, for those of you who understand, you know, every nonprofit and every organization has to raise money. We're at the fourth quarter, it's coming up on the end of the year, and we're really excited to launch our first CCE 9 Days of Giving. So check our website for that. We're going to be pushing out promotions. We're doing 9 days covering each 9 industry that we provide resources for, with entertainment, education, with thought leaders from all over the world. We're really excited. Every night we're going to have a celebrity. Well, let's just start with the emerging drummers, and then a celebrity drummer as each night gets to the end of that 9th night. So really excited about that. And then also next Wednesday, tune in, Center for Creative Entrepreneurship will be hosting again Bill Patterson, and he's doing his lunch and learn with data protection and monetization for startups. So with all that being said, now is the time to introduce you to three remarkable gentlemen. George Volkovic, PhD. I'm like, can we call him doctor? He is a go-to strategist, founder, board member, innovator, and educator. He is passionate about helping organizations and individuals grow by building successful teams and leveraging technology to drive transformative change. A strategic partner and trusted advisor to key decision makers, he is recognized for building organizations and helping them become more successful. George contributes a unique multidimensional perspective and gains insight from extensive experience as a leader in corporate consulting in the startup world. senior level executive responsible for creating and executing the program for 1871, the premier high-tech incubator in the world. He also is a published author of Mentoring Startups, Getting the Most Out of Mentoring in a Startup Environment, which you can find on Amazon. Let's welcome George.
Hey, Sadia. How you doing? Good to be with you.
And it's so good to see you. You know, I first had an opportunity of not only meeting you, but getting to know you when I was a former member of 1871. Yeah. So it's good to switch into this realm a little bit more. I would love for you to talk to us a little bit about you, though. Like, tell us a little bit about your origin story. Like, what motivates you as a person? What did 9-year-old George want to do? Like, give us a little history about you.
Boy, 9-year-old George, I guess learn how to speak English. I don't know. But, I got to tell you that there are no straight lines in life. So everything's an adventure. In my case, I grew up in Chicago. My parents were immigrants to the U.S. I grew up in the Chicago area, went through the Chicago public school system. And then you mentioned the PhD part, but actually, I got out of high school. I got a job in a factory. I was a blue collar guy running machines and did that for a while. But then I quickly realized that I couldn't do that for the next 30, 40 years of life. So started to look for something else. And I think like a lot of creatives, it's that, finding experiences, doing different things, looking to see what else is out there. So I while working in the factory, I started to go to school at night, Northeastern Illinois University, which I tell people is a blue collar kind of school. And with that, it opened me up to a new world, new different things, different people. And then from there, career-wise, just started to develop, see what the world was like. I grew up in a very, small blue-collar kind of environment, and people went to work in a factory, but that wasn't how it had to be. And then from there, I've gone on and done a lot of different things. I've, worked in corporate America for organizations like IBM and Accenture. I've had the opportunity to have a couple of startups, some better than others. I spent some time in the military, which again opens you up to a whole new world, meeting different people, going different places. And then finally, coming back and getting into the field of education. First started out as a college professor, then a department chair, then the dean of a college of business, and then heard about these entrepreneurial centers. This was this new thing about 10 years ago. And it's like, wow, how do I get involved in that? And then, as you mentioned, got involved in 1871 and then helped build a programming there, in this case, particularly around mentors, put in over 500 different mentors. When I got there, there were a few very unstructured, but then looked at it and said, hey, what does a startup need? And from there, we looked at startups and how they're very, very different than corporate environments. And then the mentors and the mentoring relationships are very different. So I went on to help build 1871 and then helped found Chicago's fintech incubator called FinTank. And that's been doing work in some of the newer technology areas such as blockchain. Cryptocurrency is getting hot again. So you'll hear more about cryptocurrency and then doing some things in those areas. So that's a little bit about me, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, see, that's not, you cannot fit all that in a bio, y'all, right? Like, that's deep. Here's what I want to touch on, because, to say that you started working in a factory and was, doing blue collar work. And I appreciate you circling back, because I never knew you had a doctorate, right? I have a sister who's a physician, and she's like, no, don't call me doctor, And there's something very humbling about that alone, because that takes time and it takes attention and determination to get through those doctorate programs. So to start working in that space, realizing and identifying what you needed to take it to the next level, I think is brilliant, and it really shines a light for individuals who are in a particular maybe work zone, who didn't go to college, who, I'm at this point encouraging people, there's so many jobs in the creative industries that you can go straight through to make 6-7 figures and bypass traditional education. So it's always really good to hear how individuals like yourself have done it. Talk to us a little bit about the military, because I know that you've done some educating, and that's also something that's really a sweet spot. Talk to us a little bit about those we honor who serve us.
I got to say, it's for me, it was very enlightening and eye-opening. And you hear a lot about the rough times, but I got to tell you, for me, getting off or going into the military, I've met individuals from so many different places. I've had the opportunity to go to places that I don't know that I've ever had a chance to go to. I've been to Guam, I've been to different places in Europe, Alaska. A lot of that was due to the opportunities with the military. And I will say, not just a plug for the military, but it gives you an opportunity to appreciate a lot of things of American life when you see what's going on in other parts of the world. And, a lot of people look at it as frustration, but to me, it's an opportunity to give back, but it's also an opportunity to learn a lot, meet a lot of different people. And I'll tell you, for example, in my time in the military, I had multiple careers. I very early started out to be a pilot, but that didn't work out so well. So that ended fairly quickly. But then I went on and got into the field of computers and accounting and finance. I learned about numbers. From there, they allowed me to become an inspector general, which is somebody who gets involved in a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse investigations. So you don't make a lot of friends there, but it's still a good way to learn a lot. And then finally, in my last 8 years, I was able to be a health services administrator, which I've very much enjoyed. And that's working with hospitals and clinics. And I will say that has opened up the door to other things. Even now, I still teach as an adjunct professor for the University of Illinois Medical School. So I teach a class a year in leadership and change. And that came about because of the experiences I had in the military, doing things in the military. When I got out, I shared what I was doing, and this program had an opening. And I've been doing that for the last 8 years now, teaching it at the medical school. So I think that's pretty cool too.
Oh my God, George! I'm like, should we pitch you to the incoming administration? I'm like,
yeah, there you go.
Technology. I mean, I'm just saying. And by the way, I see your flag there in the back. So thank you for serving. And really, I think one key thing I will bring up, which is important, and that is that you said you wanted to know how you could help, right? And I think that in any business, when we look at it from a place of service, it changes the game. Even if individuals are in sales, rather than selling to somebody, really developing a relationship of, how can I help? What can I do? Generally sustains and retains great, relationships and conversion. Okay, so there's so much to talk about. We've got you. Well, wait, before we bring on the other guest, so this is what's so cool about you guys is you have a book, Greg Reed has a book, and Mark J. Carter has a podcast. So we're going to get to all that. But George, tell us a little bit about your book.
That's a very interesting story, actually. So I get into 1871. They put me in charge of running the mentoring program. I've got some ideas, but I want to get smarter. So I go out and Google, look for all the books on mentoring startups. Tons of books on mentoring, but none on mentoring startups. So I said, what the hell? Because in the startup world, mentoring is very, very different than mentoring in a big corporation. And I got to tell you, even when I was at 1871, I had so many people approach me from large corporations, Motorola, Sears, they all wanted to be mentors, told me about how many people they'd mentored in their corporate environments. I said, no, mentoring in a startup is very different. And again, it's not just helping a person get ahead career-wise, knowing how to do the right things politically. In a startup environment, there is no structure. There is no ladder to climb. You got to build a ladder as you're going along. So you need mentors that have had some experience, some background. So very, very different. And of course, yes. And as a result of that, and the work we did, ended up writing the book on mentoring startups. So, it's a great experience. So thank you. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, you guys take this. I mean, I got to say, as a former member of 1871, I was a personal recipient of some of the mentors. So, for example, Nick Roca, who
professor at IIT,
professor at IIT. Nick helped me identify certain key things about the business at the time that I was creating. I was in the process of building this stage, and it was all about relationships and taking time. Now, Nick is on our advisory with CCE. So you spoke of building blocks in the process of building a startup. And that's so key that you mentioned that, because even with the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, we are basically the brainchild, if you will. I like to say we were born out of the legacy of 2112, but we're a program piloted by 2112 and Arts Alliance Illinois. And because 2112 is the largest creative incubator and creative workspace for creative industries, this environment helps to educate startups. Now we're a startup, right? So it's like, these key components that, to your point, thank goodness you put it in a book. So I recommend everybody go out. Seriously. I mean, you can find it on Amazon, like I said before, because these are critical ways to be able to educate yourself in the process. Don't do it alone, especially when George did all the work to put it all in a book. It just makes it that much more dynamic. And it just, to me, not only mentors like yourself, but having the actual work to look at when the mentor is not around at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, you have a guide, you have a light in the tunnel through your process of developing your startup. So George, thank you for really not only creating the book, but I know that there are countless individuals all over the world, because having been at 1871, people came in from all over the world. Yeah. There was a board, you guys, it was amazing, that had chalk of all the mentors in their times. I don't know who wrote that board out, but it was like 500 people.
Sadia, there's a story behind that. So like when I first started, they were doing it on chalk. So it was a blackboard with chalk. And then it was about maybe 25 people up there. And as we went on, it kept growing. And like I said, got it to over 500. Now, that person who did that every day, he pushed to get that electronic. And I said, no, we want to keep the chalk because it's an attention getter. It's a brand. And so I don't know how much he liked me after all of that. But again, to your point, it showed the volume and the capability that we could bring together. And I got to tell you, to build a good mentoring, and you guys have a great program at 2112. Scott Fetters, I knew him when he got it going there. So you guys got a very strong program. And I've actually done some sessions there as well. But the key is, you go out to people that could be potential mentors. And at first they're excited about being a mentor. Then the second thing is they're a little scared because it's like, oh, how much time is it going to take? But then when you get to talking to them, it's like, it doesn't take that much time. If you get a good team to work with, and my best sales pitch was for as little as half day a month, you could help a startup be successful. And that helped me recruit a lot of people. So that was my one-line sales pitch that brought in a lot of people to make a difference.
Well, you've got your one line that way. I've got my one line when I'm recruiting a mentor, which is, do you have 15 minutes? It used to be about 5 years ago, it was, do you have a half hour once a month?
Yeah.
To sit with me. But because of technology and because of everything has sort of been moved faster, and I have literally just asked for 15 minutes. And generally, if you're sharp, that should be enough time.
Yeah. You don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the weather or the Cubs or the Sox or whoever. You got to get to it. People are busy, and these days, you just got to get right to it. So good point. Very good point.
Yeah. So as we get right to it, we're going to have you stand by. We're going to introduce Greg Reed. We're going to bring all of these mentors together. So hang tight with us because they're all going to speak all together at the same time. So listen, you guys, Greg, really, Wendell Reed, you put the middle name in there too. Listen, he is the CEO, co-founder of the Mentoring Experience and Calibrated Therapies. Greg is passionate about building technologies and products that radically change lives for the better. He has recently joined best-selling author Brian Tracy along with select group of experts to author The Success Blueprint. On the day of release, the title reached bestseller status in 2 Amazon categories. Among other achievements, in biotech and pharmaceutical sales, he has most notably pioneered the launch and growth of a multi-million-dollar sales territory at Abbott, St. Jude Medical, the cardio MEMS HF system, the world's first wireless heart failure monitor to effectively fight the growing epidemic of heart failure in America. Greg is also a former professional baseball player, writer, producer, and television performer with multiple film and network television credits. He is currently working on his startup mobile app platform, The Mentoring Experience, which is a robust job exploration ecosystem. Greg Reed, What you telling me?
Hi, Sadia. How you doing? Boy, if I had your voice in my head every morning, it'd be awesome. I'd just wake up and just be energized, good to go.
You're like,
Who
I'm
needs
not.
my self-talk? Yeah,
Yeah.
I need your self-talk. That's what I need.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
I've got to, be a bit transparent here. I've known Greg for many years. Greg is one of my best friends in the world,
Yep.
and it's beautiful to be able to share your story around mentoring and what you've
Mhm.
created. But I want everybody else to understand a little bit about you. I mean, I sometimes have to be remembered. Oh, wait, that's right. You played professional baseball? Like,
All right.
gee, talk to
Well,
us.
hey, sure. No, thanks so much. I think the theme will be resounding when I give you a little background into me besides the bio there, and then I think I'm right there with George. And is this there's no direct line to anything. We're just on this harried path based on this little line of focus and the end game in mind. So I'll say that as a preface to say that like George, I came up in pretty humble beginnings in life. Grew up in Long Beach, California, and from Long Beach, I always, at the times during junior high school and high school, I was playing sports and I was in a music program. And I always, remember that kid story you guys said, what did you want to be when you grew up? I was so ingrained in music. At one point, I thought it would be awesome to be a conductor, like an orchestra conductor for the Philharmonic, pick a city, any Philharmonic, anywhere. Obviously, my life took a different direction, but from high school, I schooled over at UCLA. I was always a numbers guy and was in the aerospace engineering program for some time, but also playing baseball. And the thought of a 94-mile-an-hour fastball versus figuring out a momentum formula was kind of like it was a no-brainer. I had to focus on my baseball game, and from there I ended up fortunately being drafted by the Oakland A's and played a few years up and down minor leagues, some major league spring training games, and really learned about the value of team. We're going to find this out, at least in my story. I'll tell you that the big takeaways for me is that I learned how to integrate myself in an environment very quickly just by thinking, what's my role? And as a baseball player, you have to know your role as it pertains to a larger goal. And I think that was one of the foundational I guess, models for myself to for my after baseball career. So I went from there and ended up had a little small startup for a baseball cap company. We patented a product, a partner and I, for interchangeable logos for baseball caps. Graduated with a business degree and just put it to use. Fortunately, we were able to get into the marketplace and have a small exit. When I say a small exit, just enough money to last to get a full-time job. Let's just say that. Uh, but learned a lot. This whole startup world, and George mentioned it, it's true. It's a space of chaos. It's a space that I always feel comfortable in, and just trying to find a place to be a creative problem solver. And I think that ties into the whole spirit of your organization as well. Um, and fortunately for me, I was able to enter into the pharmaceutical healthcare world, working with big companies like Merck, Abbott, and Gilead, and they're all very notable in their own rights. And learned quite a bit about targeted agents, novel molecules, clinical trials, and worked in alongside some marketing executives to help spearhead some special projects for entering and selling and working with clinicians, doctors, and nurses alike. And what's been great about that is sort of kind of really solidified this whole idea of what does it take to move from one career to the next career? How do you become more than just a one-trick pony, right? We're all more than just one thing. And so for me, I'm thinking like we got to explore that. We have to go deeper and learn more about how many bifurcations we are as a person and what other value stops we can have to service partners, our friends, our business associates, etc. And that was the impetus for the mentoring experience platform. And I'm sure we could talk more about that, but I think I kind of walked us in at a high level of my path to now. So hopefully that's something we can go from there and keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I tell you what, there's no fun in being a one-trick pony.
Right. Right.
For anybody
Exactly.
who's known me, they're always like, really? How many things do you do? But it's like life
Hmm.
is much more fun and exciting that way. I got to tell you, I'm really excited for you, and I'm always like proud to. But talk to us a little bit about mentoring because, obviously I have some awareness, but I think it's really cool. And let me tell you why, especially now. So I'm going to have you talk about mentoring, but I want to circle back around how this COVID situation has made everything virtual and how right now it makes it really, really applicable and sort of like right on time. So tell everybody about mentoring.
Right. No, thanks. That's actually a great tie-in to the space that we had to pivot to. So mentoring, the mentoring experience, a few partners and I have been created this platform. This is my partner in life. Her name's Easton. And Easton's going to say, she's going to exit stage right now, I think. Uh, so, yeah, the mentoring experience was somewhat born, as I mentioned, from this thought of how do we become this ultimate self, right? How do we get to where we are? And typically, we would think a mentor could guide us into one career. But in my situation, I was fortunate to be inspired by multiple people to move into multiple careers. And so my partners and I have really wired up a platform. We're in beta right now. It's the mentoring experience. And our closed beta is going to pull in really busy business professionals that, to your point, may not have the thought that they have a lot of time to give back to the community. And we're pairing them by career to young people, high school students, college students, and later on professionals that are looking at exploring new careers. So the mentoring moniker really comes from the thought of one student logging into a marketplace of career experiential visits. So that student, now in the era of COVID, our platform is wired to facilitate web-based 1-hour conference meetings between that student and that one professional. That could be week one. Week two, that same student can select multiple careers and touch and feel and get an idea of how that particular professional got into that job. How do you become a graphic artist? How do you roll in and become an electrical engineer? What's your background? What does it take? It gives young people or those transitioning in careers an opportunity to sample out and maybe find out some DNA that you have inside of you that you never thought you can express. Or in another sense, if you've gone on 6 of these tours that are kind of a la carte on demand, maybe you find out, hey, aerospace engineering is not for you, right? Maybe you're more of a creative and you want to work into the creative arts. So we think it's a great platform to allow young people to exercise their vision, their personal sort of their what we would call a passion,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's more of an interest. Yeah.
Right.
And then on the professional side, if you got 1 hour a month, you can set yourself up and log yourself in and tell your story. And then those students will get a collective mentor experience. So you got 12, 20, 30 different professionals all rounding up one person. And that's the mentoring experience as a whole.
That is so cool. And I'm so excited about it. I forgot, yeah, you were also potentially a rocket scientist. I mean,
You,
the possibilities are limitless.
yeah.
But you
Well,
brought up
yeah.
something. Go ahead.
Yep. Nope. Go ahead.
I was going to say you brought up something that's really key, and I'm going to draw it back to personal experience, and that is, and my producer and partner, teammate here, Daniel Crane, who does our programming for CCE. We were having a conversation around mentoring, and I said, "Oh yeah, no, I keep like 5. Like I think I have 5 at any one time." and he was like,
Right.
5, really? I was like, yeah. I mean, one of my mentors, who's a publisher, actually said it's my personal board of directors, that I can lean
Mm.
on in terms of, do I make this decision? Is this a better play? How will this play out publicly? But I will say something that you mentioned, Greg, and that is that a mentor can identify something in you that you're not aware of. And here's what happened with me. I'll use his name. Fred Sageman is one of my mentors, and actually I think he has spoken. In fact, I know he has at 1871 back when I was a mentor, because I was so excited that my mentor was leading a whole talk on business and all that good stuff. But one of the things that he identified in me was that my brain works like a matrix. That means folks who know me will say, oh my gosh, you're such a connector. You connect this person to this person to that person. But I didn't know that there was a process that by which that happened. And Fred said, your brain works like a matrix. I put in a name and your brain goes, dee, 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 and it spits out a result.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? And you know that to be true after knowing me for like 25 years, I think, something crazy. But my point is that once I knew that, then I had a better understanding of how I operate and could then be even more efficient and effective at the business of connecting. Now, that mentor recommended that I monetize it. So here's another place where a mentor can, like Greg said, not only identify something in you, but transition you into a potential new business. What I decided not to do, though, however, was to monetize it. Even though I had the contracts, legal, everything up, my personal relationships were so valuable, and I started to realize the value of them that I just decided not to monetize them in that way. And what I mean by that, for those entrepreneurs who are watching, is there are people who get paid literally based on a connection. Whatever that business connection potentially generates in terms of income or revenue, you would then, as a connector, get a percentage of that. Okay?
Right.
So I do know people who do it. They're successful. I just decided to monetize business in a different way and not use my connecting abilities to do that. We do it in business in other ways, more of a shared resource. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to add to that to just say that that's part of the self-discovery, right? Just to know where you are in your space right now. And it's got to be a hard assessment, right? You have to be true to yourself and say, who am I? Where am I right now? What skills do I have? What assets do I have? And not be afraid to ask someone for honest feedback about where you're at. So that's part of that key, and the fact that you discover that, and it's awesome, and we all need to find that place to know where we are right now, because then it's just like it's a GPS, right? It's like, where do I want to go? And then how am I going to get there? What boat, plane, train, or automobile am I going to take to get there? And those boats, planes, trains, and automobiles aren't vehicles, they're people. People bring you everywhere. People open doors. People inspire you. So I'm right there with you, my friend.
Well, let me ask you, tell us about your book, because like, I said before, anytime somebody puts a book out there, it allows for people to really use that as a roadmap to success. So talk to us about the success blueprint, literally blueprint.
Well, yeah. Well, fortunately, I wish I could take credit for all the pages in the book. I've written one chapter among many chapters alongside Brian Tracy. So Brian Tracy, as you probably know, is a pretty well-known business professional, or he runs many professional development education platforms. So from an Alexa score, he's right up there with Tony Robbins as far as the library of content he's created. And so every so often he'll open up pages, chapters up in the book, and I was fortunate to join this particular book. So my focus is part of true to my heart and close to yours is networking, right? And what is it? What are the keys to anyone's success that we have to implement? And one is understanding networking. And we're not networking where you're giving out cards or QR codes, right? That's not what it is. So think of networking.
That's not it.
Right. So my chapter really focuses on what I would call the ecosystem, or in the medical world they would call it a little something different. It'd be more like a syndrome. It's a syndrome of knowing who you are, and that relates to knowing where you're relevant, and showing your relevance in any new environment makes you more valuable, right? And then say, what is my value proposition? My value proposition is your service offering. You talked about that earlier, Sadia. Like, how are we servicing businesses? And then, and how can you become an indispensable piece of that connections ecosystem?
Yeah.
So the goal of networking is that not everybody knows you. You want to be known to be good at a thing and be known to be exceptional or noteworthy or stand out. You can have 1,000 contacts, but if no one's thinking about you for that job or that startup or whatever it is, it's empty calories of connections, right? So my chapter touches on those aspects. Who wants that, right? You look, yeah, 20,000 followers. Okay, great, but only 2 of them respond to your posts, right? So how relevant is your content? How meaningful is that? And that's really what networking is your service offering, and then in connection with what you offer and what they see you as offering as a service.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it. So, I advise, much like I did with our other friend, individuals, the success blueprint is a great way for you to take a look at various contributors, right? Including Greg, to get some wisdom and some guidance along your journey in creating your business. Thank you, Greg. Hang tight with us. I definitely want you and George and Mark to have a good conversation amongst yourselves. So let's now take a look at Mark J. Carter. He's a creator of Idea Climbing. I want to climb that. He's a podcaster and a mentor. Mark's works with business owners and marketers to increase communication with their current clients while attracting new ones faster through interview content, virtual events, interactive media, and mentoring programs that can change the life of people they serve while growing their business at the same time. Mark believes in mentoring and that it's crucial to our professional lives, yet it's an ambiguous process that can leave people confused rather than inspired. After 20 years of interviewing successful people from all walks of life, he's created Idea Climbing, a body of work that demystifies mentoring and helps people solve problems through collaboration. He's helped launch Loyola University's Quinlan School of Business inaugural mentoring program, and Mark created a semester of mentoring for Columbia University in New York. Mark, it's so good to see you. Look, you've got your mic. I'm like, are you somewhere in the building?
I'm ready to go.
Yeah. So like I asked, I think, gosh, it's really cool to hear the origin stories. I want to know more about you because what we find when this happens is that you guys also have some really cool things in common. So organically from your heart, tell us a little bit about you.
As far as I go, I didn't call it mentoring. When I quit my job 2 weeks before I graduated college, I sought out people that were more experienced than me, more successful than me, and I learned from them. And it was mentoring at its best. I just didn't know what I was doing. It was just in my DNA. So that was one thing that I learned a lot from people that were more successful, that could share their experiences with me, could share their life experiences with me, that I could learn from and do more from and grow faster than I definitely could alone.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. So where are you from? Chicago? Where are you from?
The suburbs of Detroit. Been in Chicago 17 years now, so I'm a Chicagoan.
Yeah, but I'd say that now. Oh God, can I say it? Yeah, I've been here 11 years. But Detroit is an interesting space, having recently gotten more familiar with it and been there a couple of times this year. Being in the Midwest, I feel like it just builds you different, right? Because of the extreme weather. So talk to us a little bit about your podcast and you do a lot.
The podcast is about mentoring, marketing, and bringing big ideas to life. So I get to meet some amazing people. That's my goal with the podcast. It's not the sponsorship. It's not the downloads. It's not the numbers. It's getting to meet amazing people that I never would have met before. And I'm writing a book right now, and one of my guests helped market 90 bestsellers to the New York Times bestseller list. So I got to learn from him because he was a guest on my podcast. So that's the biggest thing I'm looking at is with the podcast. It's who am I talking with? Who do I get to learn from? And who can I learn even more from? That's the best part of the podcast.
That's amazing. So no, this is interesting because in the process of you talking to thought leaders, you're still being mentored. So would you say that your experience, it sounds like it's just fluid, like it's like, it sounds more fluid somehow.
It definitely is. And that's the point with the podcast and the other things I do is when you're 19 years old, anyone will mentor you. Okay. When you get into your 40s, it's time for money. They charge hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for their time. Who knows what's going to happen with the podcast? They say, yes, I want to be a guest. So I get to learn. And I also write for the National Speakers Association of Illinois. So I get to meet New York Times bestselling authors and past presidents and all these other people. But by creating content, I get to learn so much from other people.
That is so cool. So Mark, you mentioned that you're writing a book. Well, I'm excited because everybody's now going to have to stay tuned to check out what your book is. That's really great. But one of the things that you've just mentioned that I think is, sort of critical to this conversation is even in that process, you are taking stock of what has been to a certain extent successful for others, right? By working with a publisher who's produced, you said 9, how many?
90
bestsellers?
Yes.
Tremendous. That's fantastic. That's really awesome.
It's amazing.
So what would you say, because what you do is really cool because it's like a revolving door of the mentor gets mentored and you get mentored, or the mentor has a public out-facing spotlight because they're on a podcast. Have you had any sort of feedback from your audience on how some of your guests have impacted their lives? And if so, can you share 1 or 2 stories with us that you feel are impactful?
Most of it is, I do a how-to podcast as far as blog posts, podcast, writing. It's all about how to do something. So when someone listens or hears it or reads it, they get something that they can actually go and do.
Nice.
As opposed to just, here's a nice story. I can Google a story about Mark Cuban and read about his life, and that's great. Or Jeff Bezos. That's great. I can read about their life. As opposed to, here's how I did something. Here's how you can go do something. That's the big differentiator.
So with that, have you had participants who have listened come back to you with something that they've done, that they learned how to do from your podcast? And can you share, if you've had that kind of feedback, what's come from it?
A lot of it has been mentoring. That's one of the key themes of my podcast and my writing and everything else, is people coming back and saying, I got a mentor. Oh my God, they changed my life. Okay. I got a mentor, and I had a mentoring conversation with someone, and it changed the way I look at my life. That's one of the most common themes is people coming back and saying, now I know what to do. Mentoring is important, but you told me what to do and I did it. Oh my God, it changed my life. That's the best thing I can hear.
Okay, so since you've had multiple podcasts, whether it's you or your guest has told someone what to do, can you give us 3 tips that you can think of that are impactful for this broadcast for someone to do?
For mentoring?
Sure.
I would say, number 1, never ask someone to be your mentor, because so many people do that. They think that they reach out and it's like asking someone for a marriage proposal on a first date. It's just like, it's too much commitment. Let it happen organically. And number 2, as far as mentoring goes, it would definitely be look for advice, support, and connections. So that's your checklist. You're looking for advice, support, and or connections to make things move forward, to get your life to change for the better.
That's so great. It's one of those things where these are really great. That's great advice. And at this point, I want to bring everybody up. And everybody, you guys are all remarkable leaders. And I would love for you, each of you. I know George, you are familiar with Mark. But you guys are all meeting Greg for the first time. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves, right? Like, I'm kind of curious. And in the meantime, there's been a comment which I want to post. Let's see, Dean Gotti, thanks so much for tuning in. He's like, yeah, this is good vibes, like this is good. So, have at it, gentlemen.
So I just first thing I want to say, both of you mentioned working with students, whether they're in the high school years or the college years. And I think that's so very, very important. I want to give both of you guys a lot of credit for that, because too often individuals, if they haven't had a lot of guidance, maybe their parents couldn't have helped them or didn't have the insights, just having access to other individuals that are where they might want to be. I think that's a great thing. So I want to compliment both of you on the programs you're doing with the students. Nice work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thanks, George. Hey, George, while we're at it, Mark sort of led in with his how I built this sort of approach here. So for you, George, like, what's been your blueprint of success? Mark's hit it. That's thematically. I'm sure people probably want to know how you move into each new endeavor. Do you have an approach? Do you have a thought process? How does that work for you?
Yeah, a lot of times it's like I say, it's just getting an interest in and working from it. So I think a key is, one, don't be afraid. We're all people, and I think most people want to help other people. And I think Mark touched on it a little bit. Don't come right out and ask somebody for money, because that scares people away. But if you have an interest in something, reach out to somebody. Find, we opened up FinTank, which was a new kind of a hub. A lot of it was about learning new areas like artificial intelligence and blockchain, these different areas. I'm not an expert in those areas, but what I was able to do, and I think Saudi had touched on it as well, you bring people together that do know, and you're sort of that connector. And by bringing talented people together, you build something new, you build something better. And I think that makes a difference. So it's a good way. Reach out people. But I also want to give a caution to individuals. You got to watch out for what I call the kooks, the con artists, and the out and out criminals. So everybody says they're a mentor, but not everybody wants to be your mentor. So you got to watch out for some of those people. They're just totally nuts, and hopefully you can, sift through it fairly quickly and get rid of them. And then there's people who may want to be your friend, but the next thing you know, they're trying to sell you life insurance or something. And then there's the out criminals who want to steal your damn idea. So I think everybody should look for mentors, but watch out for the kooks, the con artists, and the out criminals.
Hey, that sounds like a book title already, George. Let's do that.
If you're interested, we can talk more.
Let's do it. You just got the outline. We'll send it to Mark, and it's going to be a New York Times bestseller. Let's go.
There you go. Works for me.
There it is. But then, the IP on that would have to go over to George. So, we get into these things. But, it's really cool that, to George's point, like, two things. One, running a foundation, nobody, there's this rule. You ask for money and you get advice.
Yeah, you get advice.
Advice, and maybe somebody will, get inspired and give. And so I think you all touch on a point, and I think it's important that relationship building is really the most important thing. And I think it was Mark or it was George who mentioned it's like a marriage. In a sense, you're asking someone to share their vulnerable or information. I'll give you one example, and George, offline, I'll tell you who this person is. But for the sake of the respect of, well, I won't tell you because I said I'd never say who it is. It's part of the agreement for being mentored. This is a high net worth venture capitalist who said to me, well, why would I mentor you? Like, what is it that you're doing that you could learn from what I do? And I said, one, I want to know how you save your money. You have an incredible family. You have children who are well balanced. I want to know how you operate in your life. Your life is successful, you're successful. I'm curious about how you're managing that ecosystem. And so he said, okay, here's the thing. I can meet with you, but I charge a lot of money for this. And I'm not going to charge you, but you can't tell anybody that I'm mentoring you because, you know, they're going to be like, how is she affording this? Right.
Right.
So it really is about relationship building. And that's what I'll say. That's more important than asking somebody for something to get something. I think, you know, George's point of con artist and crooks, you have to listen to your gut too, and whether or not this is a good match. So that's what I'll say.
Yeah, I'll add into the advice versus help and advice. I think when you have that conversation of asking for someone for advice, what ends up happening is two things. The person lending the advice will be thinking about the advice as it pertains to you. The more they think about that in relationship to you, the more they want to help you. It's a psychological principle, reciprocation, consistency, all that stuff's in there. So if a person is well-meaning enough to give you the time, they think more of you because they're giving you advice. It's just it's part of the psychological ecosystem. So asking for advice is the gateway, right? And then on the other end, the more specific that you are as the ones looking for advice about where you want to go, what is your inspiration, where do you want to be, that person giving advice, that mentor, whomever, can be more specific to you. So the more guided you are, the more focal you are, the better advice and the more relationship, because then they see your future value proposition. It rolls back up into that networking thing. So I'm adding to that with other comments, but I don't know if you see it the same way, Mark.
I see it the same way. It definitely, it's a two-way street.
Definitely.
I think something else to keep in mind is that, you know, if you ask mentors why they're mentors, you know, quite often they want to help other people. You know, many of them have been successful in some way, shape, or form, and they feel they have something to offer. And I think they're often looking for channels to do that. So being a mentee, you know, protege mentee, if you want to call it that, you know, it's asking questions in the right way, getting the right kind of help. But also from a mentor, if you look at why does an individual want a mentor, they generally have something they want to share or give back, and they're quite often looking for channels or ways to do that. So you might have some people with a lot of great insights, a lot of great information. They just don't know how to convey it. And, you know, one of the projects I'm working on now with another individual, Anthony Vitaliano, we're creating a video series. And the video series is about how to help other people create a video series. And the idea being is there's people with a lot of great ideas, but they don't know how to do a program like this. And I'm not an expert in video, but we're working on it together. You know, we're taking it step by step, and, you know, we'll put this together. And, you know, we've identified a few modules, you know, like how do you come up with your idea? You know, once you have your idea, how do you create the material so that you can teach and help other people? Once you have the materials, how do you get interest? How do you leverage technology? And then finally, you know, how do you make some money with what you've created? So again, it's an ongoing process for mentors as well as for mentees. And if you can get a couple together to work on it, it's even better. So just something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I will say that our platform, the mentoring experience, is wired in a similar way where we see the tours of the guide as a guided tour. So you're not a mentor on our platform. You're a guide, a career guide. You're one stop along many stops. Just imagine touring France, right? Touring Paris. You have multiple places to see. One of them you're going to like, one you're going to go back to. So we see mentoring being that way, but a mentor is really a guide. You're helping someone in that next phase of who they are and seeing the potential in them or helping them find their own potential.
I think it's a great point, Greg. Yeah, just helping people out along. They'll find it, but if you can give them a little bit of information so that they can find it, so much better. So good work. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to jump in there because everything that you guys are all talking about feeds into potentially the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. One of the assets that we're creating in our educational program is an e-learning platform. And because we're a global organization, COVID has shifted everything virtual, which speeds up our global network, if you will, to learn remote. And it is, you know, it's a learning of 9 specific industries. And then there's an assessment side. And then there's the career marketplace where we actually partner that industry professional with one of the businesses in that particular industry. So think like Facebook, IMDb, and Craigslist all mashed up together, right? So we're very excited about that. So here's what I'm thinking. What George just described, you know, so many people had said to us, and you, Greg, as far as giving people a tour around different industries and letting them identify the one they most like. Someone asked, well, you know, with your platform, can you just land and go from one to one? Do you have to commit to one? And it was like, no, it's an exploration, because you may think that you want to do fashion, but you may realize, well, wait a minute, actually, I could be a wardrobe stylist, but I like the marketing aspect more, because you could, you know, whatever, right? So it's really wonderful that these components, call it a book to learn from or an e-learning platform to develop an awareness of the industries are out there, a mentoring option. I would love, as today's title is Mind Your Business, play on words,
Right.
Mind Your Mentor, is because, you know, yeah, we have individuals out there who have not only a desire to serve and be able to share wisdom and knowledge that has helped them along the way, they may have figured something out that nobody else figured out, and they might kind of want to share it. You know? and I feel like at this point, that's not age specific. So whether it's a youth or a person entering into their 30s, their 50s, right? There are so many individuals who are shifting careers at 45, 50, and especially on the onset of COVID, where they're redirecting their assets and their education into other things. So any way that your organizations, your tools that you're putting out there in the world can help facilitate the ease and education for others, I think is just phenomenal.
I want to add something, and Mark touched on it a little bit. You know, individuals at all ages can be mentored. You can mentor at all ages, but you can also be mentored at all ages. And again, when it comes to things like the newer technology, and as bad as COVID has been, I think one of the things it's forced us to adapt to doing things like we're doing here, you know, leveraging Zoom and the different platforms. And so in some respects, you know, when something bad happens, it triggers you to do something new and it forces change. And again, as Mark had mentioned, the opportunity for older individuals, or I like the term more experienced as I get older, it gives you the opportunity to pick up things. And I think everybody should just be open to it. So if somebody, you know, a little bit older approaches you to learn something, don't be turned off, because again, that desire to learn or that willingness to learn is there. And if we can all help each other, we'll all be better off.
Well, I think that's a huge and amazingly good point, is that all it takes is a desire to learn. Maybe you're 50 years old and you're learning from a 20-year-old. It doesn't matter. As long as you're learning, you're moving ahead, you're advancing your career, you're advancing your life. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Someone 20 years younger from you, someone 20 years older from you. It's a matter of, are you learning something new?
Sure.
I will say hallelujah to that, because it's so important. And the other thing is, you know, I don't know, I think I just lost my thought, but there's
you're young, you'll find it again.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I know. When you have a mentor, be sure to do the work. Don't just sit, listen, and then show up and not, if you've been given a deliverable or something, make sure, because that's part of the agreement, unspoken, to be present and to be, actively a participant. And you'll learn and do better by keeping yourself engaged in the work. Go ahead, George.
I just wanted to add to that, since you touched on a good point, the accountability factor. And I will tell you, when I was at 1871, it was just getting people together just to make things happen. But quite often it was left to individuals to have a follow-up meeting or not. People didn't always have the roadmap of how to get there. So when we created FinTank, we put together a little different program. It's trying to get a mentor over a certain period of time and you would meet with that mentor over a period of months, once a month, and there would be more accountability. So you'd come up with asking your questions of the mentor, getting some insights. But when you met with that mentor again, one of the requirements was, how did you base on what you learned last time? How did you base things going forward? What did you learn? What new questions did you have? So that whole accountability factor, I think that's the key point that you're touching on there.
Yeah, it's huge. I tell you, I've got 5. I'm just saying. I've captured
There you
some
go.
of the stuff. And I've become a mentor myself, right? So it's a passion. You guys, in every one of your bios, the word passion was there. So I just say, no matter what happens, whatever's going on in the world, these guys are passionate. Maintain it, find it if you don't have it, and keep doing the good work that you do.
All right.
From the head,
Thank you.
how you can think, to the heart, how you can feel, to the hand in which you can do.
And on that
Hey,
note,
now.
happy Friday. Thank you so much, Greg Reed. Thank you so much, Mark J. Carter. And thank you, George Volkovic, for joining us today on Mind Your Business, Mind Your Mentor. I'm Sadia Davis. I'm so excited to be here with you, filming live from our 2112 main stage. Since we're here, we can just give you a little looky look of all the different things we've got going here at 2112 Chicago, the world's largest creative incubator and co-working space in the world. Come check us out. While there's social distancing and all that good stuff, hang tight. One day, you'll all be able to come visit and take a class right here, see these guys in person. But until then, enjoy your weekend. And when you have an opportunity, check us out online. Check our events page because we're putting out some incredible programming, and like us on Facebook and Instagram. Why not? Have a great weekend, everybody.